All right, look at that. Under an hour by 4 seconds. Okay, so. All right. This is what we call the Afterburn. So if you've got comments or questions, you can go ahead and come up to the mic here, or you can start typing in online, and our Shamish team back there will take note of the comments and questions. Okay? And so I hope this is making sense. I'm really enjoying going through the letter to the Ephesians. I hope that you are as well. All right? And what's interesting is that we're going to get to chapter 4 right in the same week that we're going to be getting to Deuteronomy 17, which I think is kind of interesting, you know, in terms of dealing with authority and people in authority. So I think that's pretty cool. A good timing with that. All right, so we'll begin with Denise.
My question is whether or not I'm getting what you're saying correctly.
You got to put the mic right up by your mouth.
With from 11 through, I think 18, with the pressures and things that we go through, so like the trials and tribulations, if you've been through like traumas, abuses, things like that, that instead of taking that on and trying to constantly defend, if you go to Father and ask him to forgive them, for they know not what they do, even though in your mind, what you're seeing, and you believe they know what they're doing, but not really, because it's affecting so much more. It's on a bigger scale, that if you go to Father and ask him to forgive them, you don't pick it up. You are able to move on and be strengthened in the inner person.
Yes. Look, when it says things like, and by the way, when we talk about pressures, let me go back to the gym analogy. A muscle, to get bigger and stronger, we have to exercise it, which means we have to strain it, push it beyond its limits, irritate it, create micro tears. I mean, we do this to make a muscle stronger. What do you think is going to happen to make your inner man stronger? You're going to have to get irritated, you have to work hard, push beyond your limits, have some micro tears, you know. There's things, it's the same analogy. Now, as far as the Father forgive them, understand that when it says they do not know what they're doing, it says, Father forgive them, they know not what they're doing. It's not like they don't know what they're doing. They're often doing it absolutely on purpose. They don't know that it's wrong. They don't know that it's hurting other people. They don't know that it's hurting themselves. So forgive them, Father, because they don't really understand that what they're doing is a problem. Oh, they're doing it on purpose a lot of the time. But they don't know. The ones who did whatever they did to Yeshua knew what they were doing. They didn't understand what they were doing. In other words, they were killing Messiah, that they were doing these things as a part of a bigger picture. And so he says, forgive them, Father, because if they really understood what they were doing, they wouldn't do it. But they don't. It's not like they're doing it by accident. They know exactly what they're doing. I mean, you know, a husband or wife commits adultery, they know what they're doing, but they're not having a relationship with the consequences of it. They're not having a relationship of all of those things. If they did have a relationship understanding what the consequences, they wouldn't do it. If they understood they were going to destroy their marriage and themselves and everything else, they would never do it, because it's that destructive. But they do know what they're doing. They know that I'm going after someone, not my spouse, and I'm looking to have sex with them, whatever it is. I'm having a relationship that I should not have. They understand that, so it's not like saying, forgive them, Father, they don't know what they're doing. No, they knew exactly what they were doing. They just weren't thinking about the whole picture of it, which is kind of what you said, right? The full picture of the ramifications of what they're doing. So it really should be more like, forgive them, Father, they don't understand the consequences and really just the consequences of what they're doing. They're just doing stuff out of an emotion-driven thing. Let me think for a second before I say this. All sin, I think, generally speaking, I could be wrong here, but pretty much all sin comes out of an emotionally challenged place. I don't want, so you don't do. I want, so you do what you shouldn't do. Okay? People don't commit adultery by accident. It is an emotion. People don't steal by accident. There's an emotion. I want. Okay? They're both the same thing. I steal, I commit adultery because I want something that's not mine, that I shouldn't have. Murder. I'm upset. I'm angry. I'm mad. Whatever. So I kill you. All right? All of this stuff comes out of a negative emotional space. So he says, forgive them, Father. They're being led by their negative emotions. So they're not thinking right. Okay? So when people do things, they know what they're doing, but it's not remember we talked about this months ago. when you're dealing with your rational, logical mind versus your emotional mind, whichever one is stronger wins. Okay? And so they're not knowing in a rational, logical way what they're doing because their emotion is driving. And so it's forgive them, Father, they're not thinking. They're emotionally driven. If they were thinking, they wouldn't do this. Does that make more sense? All right, so thank you for bringing that up because I think it's a really powerful point. All right, Janet?
Thank you. That was really good, Rabbi. When you were teaching about 16 through 19, I was thinking about the Barim 10:12.
Right.
And I just felt that it just matched so well with what we learned, early on, like to fear Yahweh was the first part, which is to strengthen our inner man, because a lot of it has to do with fear and not trusting. But then to walk in all his ways, like you were saying, laying the Torah, his Torah in our hearts, to love him, which he's talking about rooted, grounded in love, and just serve him with all your heart, which is all, I think, about love as well. And then to guard his commands in order to become him to his completeness. So I don't know if that helped. Is that not?
No, that's a good analogy. I like it. Yeah, that's a great connection. Deuteronomy 10:12. Very nice.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Yeah.
And then I had another question comment. I don't know if I'm making this right. With 3:20, when I was a Christian, a lot of the teachings, they use this verse to really make it about miracles, big miracles of healing, like he can do all according, he's able to do exceedingly above what we ask or think. But to me, when I was reading it now, after all these teachings that you've given us, the biggest miracle, I guess, the biggest thing that we can think or imagine is becoming like him. Because that's a huge transformation from where we are to what he is. So that's what I got from it. I don't know if it makes sense.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, Kathy.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You're
Another
welcome.
wonderful. You were talking in your little mini sermon just now, about emotions driving, and going back to my praise before. Thank you for letting me know that I was driving in fear mode, and that's a negative space. And my beautiful roommate, Marlene, who's so simple in Yah. So I'm very blessed to have her, meaning that she redirects. She goes, how is staying in the mess of all this? So she's helping me to learn to redirect, to take every thought captive and whatever. But it's, and you were talking about you wouldn't have done what you did. I wouldn't have done what I did. I wasn't thinking. I was in that emotional thing, and it changed my heart to stone. Thank you for that. That I'm alluding back to the hope that you give me, that I had snapped, hit a wall. So, but
Amen.
This one was sort of from last week, but we went over it today.
Oh, wait, hold on. Just because we're talking about emotional stuff.
Spiritual stuff.
Well, no, but the emotional, making decisions. Look, if you did the color code, all of you that kind of did the personality stuff, if you have a strong amount of blue, and I'm not picking on you. You guys have a lot of great aspects that's in there. But you also are the most susceptible to making emotional decisions. Yep. So just be aware of that. I mean, if you know, because remember, what did I tell you when I gave you the test? It's to help you understand yourself better so you can understand others better. But step one was to understand yourself better.
Amen.
And so the two most emotionally driven colors are blue and yellow. But yellow is mostly driven by its positive. It gets over the top. It's more the manic side, okay? Where blue's more the depressive side. So if you're blue, yellow, you're manic depressive. I don't know. So, but just realize that you have that tendency. Look, there's weaknesses in all the colors. Your weakness is the negative emotional tendency to have the negative emotions drive. Okay, that's your weakness. Other colors have different weaknesses, okay? So I'm not saying that yours is worse or better. In this situation, it just applies that you should just be aware that it doesn't have to be your primary color, but if you've got a good amount of blue in there, it can grab the wheel when you're in an emotional place. And so you have to be aware of that, more than likely of the other colors. It's the one that does that more. And so as long as you're aware of it, that should help give you at least a better shot of grabbing the thinking part of it and taking more charge with that, forcing the thinking to override the emotion to make sure that the emotion is a proper emotional driver. Because some of your emotional drives are great, okay? But you got to make sure to have at least the rational side filter it first. Okay, so I just want to throw that out there because some of you struggle, you don't realize this is part of what the color code showed you, is that's that blue side of you, okay? I mean, you guys are the best your positives are, I think, almost better than any of the positives. I love your positives, okay? Your task getter-doners, your relationship people, your intimacy levels, all of those social aspects are just fabulous for the body, for everything. But you have this other side on the negative side of the emotional scale. And that's something that if you're aware of it, you can say, okay, I need to make sure I'm thinking, not just reacting emotionally. And if I can't do it, I need to go see somebody who can help me see that, which is what we did with you, so you could see where that's happening. Okay? Mm-hmm. All right, go ahead.
Thank you, Rabbi. So the one from last week, how many times we've read this? It's Ephesians 2:12. So I shared this with a lady at my work. At that time, you were without Messiah, excluded from the citizenship of Israel. I paused there and I said, wow, excluded from the citizenship of Israel. It sounds like that was a goal, to become one with Israel. And then you went on and on,
Right.
But that's... So when I showed this to her, which she's a sweet lady in the church, she says, yeah, we're adopted as sons. And I said, well, what about Ruth? Well, yeah, she literally became Israel. And I'm going, she changed her citizenship, which we can all do, but anyway. So then she came back and all kinds of stuff. But I just thank you for your teaching and that I didn't respond to all the scriptures that she was using to say, well, we're adopted in, but we're separate. So thank you.
Amen. Look, and one of the things that we need to understand, and when people talk about from a New Testament point of view, like, we're under the New Testament now, the New Covenant now. Look, Paul's talking about here that you were strangers from the covenants of promise. He didn't say, which is fine because they're irrelevant, we got new ones now. So he's talking about them becoming one new, renewed man in those covenants of promise, which we know which ones they are. They're the ones that already existed, promised to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and then through Moshe and the covenant at Sinai. So it's not talking about where he says, and thank God we have a new covenant now, and we don't need to worry about all these things. He says, no, Messiah provided a way for you to be part of that covenant, those promises. And so here it's clear that he's not talking about anything different and new. He's saying that what's different and new is the understanding that we could all be in the same covenant of promises. That's information that had been hidden up to this point. Okay? Chris?
Okay, I have a question and a comment. The question is about the fivefold ministry. I don't know if you want to have me next time talk about that. Okay.
Yeah, wait till next time because we're going to cover it next time.
Yeah, okay. So in 1 Corinthians chapter 4, I was making a connection with what Shaul was talking about in Ephesians. In verse 1 it says, let a man regard us as servants of Messiah and trustees of the secrets of Elohim. So that's kind of showing he's talking about the same thing with the secrets and administering them. And then when you're talking about the fatherhood is what I was focusing on. In verse 14 it says, I do not write this to shame you, but to warn you as my beloved children. For if you should have 10,000 instructors in Messiah, yet not many fathers. For in Messiah Yeshua I have brought you forth through the good news. Therefore I appeal to you, become imitators of me. And then it talks about Timothy as he's also like a son.
Right.
And so it made me think about this, like we have all these like teachers in the world and instructors on different things, but not that the father-son relationship. And it even says that Paul like brought forth the children. And like to you, for me and you, I feel like you're almost the same age as my father. And the bringing forth, I want to connect to like being born again, kind of, because when my father had me and I was taught by him, he did not teach me what you can teach me. And so there's a different level. And then in Matthew 23, it says, don't call anyone father on earth. And for you only have one father. But the father on earth, I was thinking of that as like the below, like my earthly father. But if you think about the father as like a spiritual, halakhic father, that would be more like you and Messiah and Yahweh. And because I always think of, I know the Catholics do their papal thing as calling him father, which is false because he is not, have the right idea of anything. But I think, I don't know, I mean, the Catholics, I feel, have at least one thing in that they, in seeing the Pope in that way, is not entirely wrong, I think, in just that one aspect.
In other words, potentially, if he was doing the role, it could be, but he's not. I understand. All right, look, good analogy. And one of the things that I like that what Chris brought out, which is Shaul addresses individually unique things in the Corinthians, area with the Galatians, with the Ephesians, but yet at some point, the encouragements in terms of understanding either A, what's under the problems is the same, and B, the solution to the problems is the same. So he says the same thing to everybody. Even though the actual problem that they're dealing with may be a little different in the way it manifests in Corinth versus in Ephesus versus wherever, but yet what underlies the problem is the same problem. And he talks about that, the inner man problem, how we're driven in the decisions we make, and the solution, needing vertical structure and a father figure, so to speak, somebody to instruct you and to nurture and care and provide and protect. So he says the same thing if you go to all the letters to some degree, while addressing different manifestations of those issues, because the things that they're doing in one area, they're not exactly doing the same thing in the other one. What's under it is the same. The causality is still the same. And so the solution is still the same. And so it's excellent that you pointed that out. Okay, Eduardo.
Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi.
Shabbat Shalom.
In Ephesians 3:17, it speaks about Messiah dwelling in our hearts. And you mentioned throughout the Brit Hadashah, there are so many acknowledgments of that being the case, right, dwelling in our hearts. I had a question around that tying into or connecting with something in the prophets. And Jeremiah 31:33.
Yep.
Where it says, for this is a covenant I shall make with the house of Israel after those days, declares Yahweh. I shall put my Torah in their inward parts. Is Yeshua that Torah?
That would connect.
Or is this prophetic
yes.
of times to come?
It's Yeshua, exactly. It's the Torah, it's the truth, it's the way. I will place that in their hearts. Now, he's not going to just take it and place it in your hearts. He's going to cause you to go through the things to choose to lay it up in your heart. Okay?
Because I always thought that was prophetic of times to come, because the next verse talks about this is mentions that you no longer will teach each one of your neighbor, each one his brother, saying, know Yahweh. I know we're still in times where a lot of people on earth don't know our Father, right? So
right.
That's why I was asking about.
Right. Look, it's the same thing in John 14 when we talk about the receiving of the Ruach, and it says that it's the Spirit of truth. He says, and I am coming to you. So this is the idea of the Spirit of truth. And so this is, again, coming into your hearts, dwelling in you. Okay? So it all connects together. But that was a very good connection, Eduardo, with Jeremiah 31, where it talks about the new covenant, or the renewing of the covenant. And, of course, the last verse you quoted is proof that we haven't gotten there yet. because it says, and each one will not have to tell his neighbor, know Yahweh. They'll all know them. And they'll all know him from the littlest to the oldest. We're not there yet. So for people to say, well, we're in the New Testament now. We're in the New Covenant now. Not according to Jeremiah, we're not. Now, we're in the processes of renewing that covenant and people coming into covenant in Ephesians chapter 2, where they're now no longer strangers of the covenant. But this, when we hit the one where he talks about, basically, which is the Ezekiel 2 sticks coming together, is also what Jeremiah is talking about in chapter 31. Because in chapter 31, he talks about, I will no longer have the same covenant with the house of Judah and the house of Israel, but then he talks about only the house of Israel, where they will have come together and now they're one. So we start in 31:31, and then we get down to what you were reading in 31:33. And so this two became one in those couple of verses. All right? Okay, Shamash Steve.
Okay, I made a connection here as you started off earlier. It says, indeed, we have heard of the administration. So I had to look up the definition. It says process of running a business, organization, etc., management of public affairs. So administration is the how and the what. And isn't that what we find in the Torah, a how and a what of how we process the public affairs, how to handle them? So shouldn't we be administering Torah to our lives?
Yes, and of course, when he's talking about administrators, he's talking about those who are supervising. That's what an administrator does, supervises the doing, the how, and the what, right? Okay. Denise is back.
I just wanted to comment, actually. I'd been watching Love and Torah Part 9 and then the Afterburn, and you talked about how you speak things that boldly and hammer it in, which is something that was discussed on Love and Torah, and that it was hammer time, and you said you can't touch this, so it works.
I can't believe I did that. I made a song reference from the 80s? Okay, no. Okay, so that's so odd that I would do that. Actually, I didn't do that at all today, which is odd. Okay, so, but thank you for bringing one in. All right, so, look, not everybody likes getting hammered. I made a joke about that too once, the idea about getting hammered. No, the tool that's being used is not always the tool you'd rather have, okay? But this is the tool that you've been given if you're sitting here with me. And it's just, and so if you're here, you got to ask the question of, am I here because Abba put me here, then I'm supposed to get this tool being used on me? Or am I here just because I randomly walked in here and I could have gone anywhere else? Since almost all of you moved here to be a part of this, I would say you're here because this is the tool that was necessary for you. Okay? It's not like you just walked into your local congregation and happened to have somebody who wields a hammer versus a screwdriver versus whatever. You happen to have that. No, you chose and were drawn to this. So then you probably needed that type of, delivery. Okay, because I've had people ask me, well, can't you just deliver differently because, there are people that you could be reaching. I'm supposed to be reaching the people that this is what they're supposed to be hearing. Okay? I'm not going to change the delivery to reach people that I wasn't supposed to reach. I can't change this. This is how the Ruach works with me when I start reading his word. Okay? And it comes out the way it comes out, which is funny because new people that just find me will say things like, they'll send me emails saying, and we just want to pray and encourage you not to change. Look, I can't do it any other way. If you ask Uncle Bob, who's heard me do this for 20 plus years, okay? This is how I do this. It's not, and I don't come up here trying to do it this way. It's just the passion and the emphasis that he wants me to use on whoever's listening, and whether you can handle that or not or receive it or not, that's between you and him. But this is the instrument that I am. And so as an instrument in his hands, this is what you get, okay? All right, if you want to listen to the other guys out there that just kind of talk, okay, so we're going to talk about Torah portion Rieh today. And we're going to notice that there's a bunch of commandments in there that we're going to talk about. And I just go on like that for an hour, and I'm like, I don't know what I heard. But it was nice, and it was gentle, and it was sweet, and it didn't offend me at all. And I'm going to tell you, look, you need to figure this out, or you're never going to get there. Okay? I don't know what else to do. You needed to hear that that inner man is not going to be okay in a forever suit if it's not fixed first. Because you will be just miserable forever then. If you're miserable now in a flesh suit, imagine how miserable you'll be knowing you can't die. At least there could be an end to this. Somebody needed to say that to you. So let's heal and fix that inner man so it'll be great and flourish in the forever suit. Okay? And stop playing with this. Let's grow up and get it done. All right, Justin. It's like if your wife comes up, you have to come up.
Yeah, well, as to quote Rabbi, that's just too legit to quit.
There you go.
So, anyway, I want to make sure.
That is more MC Hammer than we needed in one sermon. Yes.
So I want to make sure I'm understanding all this correctly, please. And that is here 3:11 or 13 through 20. And that is that we go through these pressures and we go through these tests and we go through these trials. And basically it's to show the pressure on us that we can give Father esteem in what we do and the choices we make in those pressures. That we choose to walk and act and behave in a way that is in the fruit of the Spirit, and in those things he says that the Messiah might dwell in our hearts through belief. Well, we show our belief by what we do, and that having rooted and grounded in love. And then we get to 19, and basically the goal is, how I see it, is to be that way we are filled to all completeness of Elohim. And in doing that, we'll be able to understand the width, the length, the depths, and the heights of these things. Is that correct?
Yes,
correct?
that works beautifully. And by the way, when you talk about the pressures, you know what an expert is? I mean, that's what we want to reach, right? We want to become an expert at all this. Well, if you take the breakdown of the word as expert, it's a form or drip under pressure. Okay? Okay, so X means former, and spurt would be like a drip or a shooting. So you have to be under pressure to become an expert. Okay, you were just a drip, so to speak, and now you're under pressure, you become an expert. Okay? So now I've just called you all former drips. Well, I've called you drips, now you got to decide if you're going to be a former drip. Okay, then you can be an expert. Okay? Because the drip under pressure spurts, right? So a former drip under pressure is an expert. All right. Take that for what I think it's a good analogy, you know. Okay. Because it's the pressure that gets you there. All right, Marlene.
Hey, I just I wanted to comment about your hammer, mention. And so I remember watching teachings. You talk about being a hammer, and I just recently heard something about how a sculptor hammers on stone, so many times, and then finally that piece chips off. But it takes hammering until it chips off. And eventually, the sculpture becomes something beautiful. And so it just came to me today when you were saying that we do need that. We need all this other stuff chipped off until the beautiful thing that we become is going to be like Yeshua-like, part of the Elohim species, So I just thought about that and I want to share. Okay,
Appreciate
and
that.
then what you were talking about.
Well, let me just talk.
Okay,
You mentioned the sculpture thing, okay? So I don't know if it was Michelangelo, but one of the great sculptors was asked one time, how do you, take a big block of granite or whatever and make it into a horse or whatever you're making it into. He says, I just chip away everything that doesn't look like a horse. So we're chipping away at everything that doesn't look like Yeshua, okay? As the master potter is sculpting you, but it's a hammer and a chisel chipping away. It's not like it's like just gently rubbing it and it just falls off, okay? It's being chiseled away. There's a certain amount of violence to that, just chiseling it away. You're not taking a nice cloth and just gently going, okay, that needs to go. Now that works if there's something stained that just spilled on something and you want to wipe it off. Now we're chiseling away everything that doesn't look like him. All right? Okay, continue.
Thank you. And then I even think about, when we think about that, when you said, reminded me of the rubbing, I think about us with each other. You know, in order for us to get polished, we need sandpaper. And you know, when we interact with each other, sometimes we're sandpaper. You know, but if we change our perspective and not focus on our mishpacha as attacking us or doing something to us, or because if they would just change, then our lives would be better. If we receive that as something to rub off some extra whatever in us, to refine us, to make us smoother, then I think we could be so much happier. You know, when we see it as the rubbing to refine us, you know. So I appreciate about that, my mishpacha, especially when we get into it with stuff.
Amen.
You know, hallelujah.
Amen. All right.
So anyway, I wanted to mention about what I had an aha moment with verse 17, when we talk about Yeshua dwelling in our hearts. Like when you talk about not being ethereal, not being this concept, this magic whatever, you know. And when you talked about the word, the commandments, it reminded me of when he talks about, and he's gonna, if he dwells in us, if we abide in him and he in us. And so it just really opened my mind, is that it's all about practicing. It's all about doing. It's all about changing because of the practice, you know. So I just want to tell you, I just appreciate that. Finally, that verse changed, instead of it being this magic, open up and deposit, you know, into my heart. You know, it's him being expressed. Eventually, we're going to be complete in him because we're going to be doing and changing and all
Amen.
that stuff. So hallelujah.
Amen. Thank you. All right, live stream.
From Angelique Ewan says, what is the inner man? I know it's inside me, but what is it? Is it spirit or soul?
All right. Let's not try to give it a physical definition or a substance, like sort of a substantive definition. It's the you that resides in that body. Okay? All right? So somebody could be young or old, fat or skinny, white or black, it doesn't matter. That's the outer man. It's the person inside. It's how you think and how you feel. That's the inner man. Okay? The you that is inside of the shell. Okay? Okay, so I'm the same person I was when my hair was black, with or without the beard, fatter or skinnier. Me is what's inside. Okay, so let's not try to get into this idea of the spirit and the soul. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about what makes you you, how you feel and how you think. Okay, that's the inner man. Because when you put that in any other suit, it'll still be you, right? When you get the incorruptible suit, you will still think and feel like you do now, but it's going to have to get a lot better before we get there, if you understand what I'm saying. But you'll still, yeah, thank goodness he said. All right? And I think that's the right way to look at it, because I think that some of you are somewhat tortured now in your own heads now. And you're going to do that in a forever suit? Why would you want to be miserable in a forever suit? At least if you're miserable now, there could be an end to that, and that could be the end of it. I'm not recommending that. I'm just saying. But then we're looking for something that's eternal. I think I'd like to be in a place of shalom in an eternal suit. I'd like to be filled with simcha, with joy. I'd like to be filled to overflowing with just abundant of love and joy and peace, and not all of the other junk that I'm dealing with already in my head. Because who wants to do that forever? And the answer is, to get there, you have to embrace and bring Yeshua in and align your inner man with what he is. With your personality, with what brings your uniqueness to it, but you're aligning that you think and feel about things in your experience the way he does. You filter them, you interpret them, you understand them through a Yeshua mindset. Let this mind be in you. Philippians 2:5, right? Let this mind be in you. There's a Messiah Yeshua. All right, go.
Okay, I had several people asking about some more about the inner man. Madeline Misner Roloff says, question, hi Rabbi, what are your thoughts strengthening the inner man? What do you do when there seems to be an area in your life where you constantly fail to get it right? How do you get a fresh perspective or a new approach? And then Melton Kent Jr. and Andrew both said, Rabbi Steve, in working on our inner man, how should we start our day every morning in order to face the world we live in but not a part of, coming from one with anger and other issues?
All right, so let me answer Madeline's first, okay? Madeline, so the answer to how do you get a fresh perspective and new approach, what do you think the answer is? Someone said, call you. And that answer is too specific but correct. In other words, the only way to get a fresh perspective and approach is to get counsel. You can't get a fresh perspective and approach out of your own head. It's got to come from outside of you. Okay, so you're going to have, because where you are is where your own head has gotten you. Okay? And so you need, that's kind of what you heard Kathy saying and some of the others who came up and talked about through counsel. I was able to shift their perspective. I was able to shift and give them a different approach. That's what we're going to read about next week in the fivefold. Part of their job is to help you do all of those things. All right? So that's the answer to that. Now, as far as the second question, which was, like, how do you approach your day? Look, we don't live, I hate to quote like a purpose-driven thing like that guy who wrote that, but we don't start our days or focus our days with intent and purpose in mind. We kind of just get up and start living. Okay? So what I've taught and been taught through life in terms of being successful, like successful meaning achieving whatever it is you want to achieve in life. It doesn't mean money or this or that or career. It just means being successful in feeling like you're accomplishing what you want to accomplish. That intention and planning are critical. So here's two things you can do that will improve all of this immediately. Literally, like immediately. Number one, do not go to sleep at night until you plan out your intention for the next day. Doesn't take but 5-10 minutes. You can write it down on a little pad. I've got a little pad that sits on my dresser to write down things like that if they come to me or I need to write it out. Or a lot of times I'll just put it in my phone as reminders that'll pop up and remind me. But plan out what you want to accomplish the next day. How you want to feel about it, how you want to be thinking about things, how you want to be approaching life, whatever it is. It's not just about the tasks. Well, I need to do some shopping and I need to go to work and I need to get this client no, but think about how am I going to be approaching my day? What am I going to do to be more Yeshua-like throughout my day? We did a thing a long time ago. This is a great thing you can do every day, even though we did it for 30 days, was the Ve'ahavta challenge. Ve'ahavta in Hebrew means, and you shall love. It's the beginning it's Deuteronomy 6, 5 through 9, right? And you shall love Yahweh with all your heart and might and being, and you shall do these things, right? We read that as part of our liturgy every week. When you lie down, when you rise up, when you're in the house, when you're walking by the way, all these things. Why not read that in the morning and say, my intention today is to do this all day. To have it be as frontlets before my eyes, where I'm thinking through a Yeshua-like, a Torah-like mindset all day. Okay, that it should be as bound on my hands, and it should be evident in everything I'm doing that I'm trying to be Yeshua-like. But it's going to start with two things. So at night, and then in the morning, wake up and review what you did the night before so you remember what your intention is. So you start your day with purpose and intention, as opposed to just waking up and the alarm hits, and then you're off to the races, and you're behind, and you're late, and you got to grab different things, and you're going to eat, you're going to shower, whatever you're going to do, and you're too busy in activity to actually think about what you're doing. So make time, get up a few minutes earlier, okay, if you need that extra few minutes to, I get up in the morning, and I actually stay in the bed. I don't get out of the bed until I talk to him, and think about my day and think about my relationship with him. That I do in the morning before I get out of the bed. Some of you think that's too informal a way, that you have to get on your knees and this, that. No, I wake up and I don't move out of the bed till I deal with him and deal with my day. That's how I get out of the bed. All right, so I make sure I've got time to do that. I give myself 30 minutes. I don't always need 30 minutes. I might only need 10 minutes, but I give myself 30 minutes to not have to just jump out of the bed and get running around with my day. Because I know once I get out of the bed and start doing things, I'm now distracted. All right? So I do this in bed when I wake up. That's my first activity. And it makes a difference. Okay? And it will work immediately in improving things to start your night before. It'll also help you get things done if you actually plan out your activities too. I mean, do that as part of what you do the night before. Go ahead and plan what your day is going to look like so you don't forget things that need to get done, and then the day goes by and you go, oh, I forgot to go shopping. I forgot to get gas. I forgot to do whatever. I forgot to call this person I was supposed to call. So write it out. Go over it the night before. Review. Now, some of you have calendars, and maybe like I have a calendar where Elder can put things on my calendar. So I look at my calendar the night before so I know, do I have an appointment in the morning? Who do I have it with? Am I ready for these things? Review and plan doesn't take very long. But I want you to add not just tasks, to think about what you're going to think about. What am I going to think about tomorrow? How am I going to feel tomorrow? What do I want? I want to wake up. I want to make sure I'm waking up appreciating that I'm waking up. I want to start off the day appreciating that I'm alive, that I have another day to grow into Yeshua-like state. So start off with appreciation. These are all things that we'll talk about more when we get into some of the classes that I want to do. Okay? Ones that will be free, not the ones you have to pay for. Although those classes will actually have this stuff in it too. How do you get yourself in that right focus? And the thing is, you actually have to take time to grab a hold of your focus. Because otherwise, life will refocus you all day long. And then you'll never get to focus. But if you can take the time, well, I don't have the time. Well, make the time. You can get up earlier, and then you'll have time. So before you go to bed, don't just like, oh, I'm exhausted, go in the bed. No, stop and have this activity that you do. Look at your calendar, look at your phone, write down on a pad, activities and mindset. And review your activities that you're going to be doing the next day and your mindset. And then in the morning, do it again. You did it the night before, so you should be much quicker in the morning just to remind yourself, okay, this is the mindset for the day. These are the things I need to get done. And then boom, you're off to the races. But you're off to the races in the right mindset. Okay? All right, next.
Okay. Kevin Newkirk says, is Ephesians 3:16 connected with Genesis 6:3 as it relates to having long life in the Spirit through strengthening?
All right, so 6:3 says, my spirit shall not strive with man forever and is going astray. All right? So in other words, he's saying, look, I'm not going to be at this enmity and contention with you if you don't want to align with me. So I'm going to give you 120 days, 120 years, and that's it. All right? So that gives you time to figure this out or not figure this out. But I'm not going to fight with you forever. I'm not going to strive constantly battling. This is why we're happy that, I want to say this in the right way because I love my children. This is why we're happy they move out eventually. Because adults can't live together without striving with each other. So it's like, it's time for you to go. And that's just because we're not all on the same page the way that, now Abba says, look, I'm not going to fight with you and strive with you forever. So don't think that that forever striving inner man is going to go get put in a forever suit. So that's a great verse to use to make my point. No, you're not going to be in that heart and mindset in a forever suit and then I have to strive with you. That's why I gave you a flesh suit, so I don't have to strive with you forever. Okay? And nobody's getting the eternal suit until they figure out how not to strive with him. We need to figure that out. Okay? Now, don't worry about, well, what about all the people, blah, blah, blah. Listen to the Millennium and Kingdom teaching, and I explain the plan for that, okay? Everybody gets to live in the flesh suit with their eyes open to work towards not striving with him anymore. You know what? I never really used it that way, but when people ask, well, is that a salvation issue, this, whatever? Look, they're really asking, is this going to keep me out of the kingdom? You know what's going to keep you out of the kingdom? Striving with him. Okay, he's not going to strive with you forever. Okay, so Genesis 6:3 is great for that. Okay, awesome. Next.
From Chris Benavides, it's hard for me to hold a position of set apartness without offending a person, work in an environment. Not that I'm being offensive, but that I disengage mentally and it's taken as an offense. Do you have any words?
All right. All right, two things are really important in the way you look at this. One is that you cannot control the response of the other person. However, you must be clear and know that you didn't do something you could have done better to not cause offense. So you can't just go around, well, I can't control what they say, so I'm just going to do whatever I want. No. I mean, I can't control how they feel, so I'll just say whatever I want. No, you should make the effort not to offend. However, if you feel like, with confidence, that you've made the effort and they're offended anyway, you can't control that. But you should be making sure, though, especially since it's like a working environment, there are things that are really not required of you to get involved in, so don't get involved. Because we insert ourselves in all kinds of places that are completely not necessary. And then we cause offense, even though we're not trying to, but offense is received because we're involved in something we shouldn't be involved in anyway. See, Christianity created this mess for you by making you feel like you have to say something, okay? No, really, that's where it comes from. They made you feel like you have to say something. You're required to stand up for this. No, you're not. That's between them and the Creator, not between them and you. I'm required to say, and you know what? I only do it when you come to me or from the microphone. I do not go and insert myself anywhere in anybody's thing telling them that they're wrong about anything or that there should be a different way to do something. Okay? I don't do that. Some of you do. I don't go on Facebook and correct everybody's posts. I don't get in their face about everything they say that's wrong. I don't do anything unless someone asks me to by coming to me for counsel or from the microphone to everybody. Okay? So don't do that. So again, with confidence, the best you can, make every effort not to cause offense. If offense happens anyway, then that's on them, not on you. Most likely, okay? As long as you've done with integrity your best effort not to create an offense. Now you have to stand up and do what you need to do as far as saying, I can't do this or I can't be involved in that. And if they get offended by that, I mean, you say it with enough, understanding that you're trying not to create a problem. Say, look, I don't want to offend anything, but I can't eat that, or I can't do this, or I can't do that. I mean, I'm not judging you or anything else, but I can't do that, okay? Now, if they get offended thinking you're judging them anyway, you can't fix that. Lots of you have family members, and when you started keeping commandments, they started acting like, oh, you're judging me. No, I'm not judging you. I'm judging me. I can't do it. You do whatever you want. But they're going to take it from the point of view because they know that you now think what they're doing is wrong. Because when you were doing it, okay, you were doing it and they were doing it. Now you stop doing it because you think it's wrong, which means that by definition, then you think they're wrong too. We say, no, I made a choice for me. I'm walking out my own salvation in fear and trembling. I don't need to walk out yours. That's your thing, okay? So no, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that for me it's wrong, and I'm not doing it. And I may be wrong about that, but for where I am right now, I think I need to not be doing that. If you keep doing it, well, that's your thing, okay? Next question.
Okay, from Melton Kent Jr. Rabbi Steve, you mentioned Deuteronomy 6, 5 through 9. Am I understanding wrong that unlike Jehovah's Witnesses style, that we are not to share the good news?
Yes, but look, I don't know if that has to do with the V'ahavta or not, but we are not here, because there's Jehovah's Witnesses and those that are out there in Christianity knocking on doors and stuff, they're not understanding Matthew 28, okay? The Great Commission, all right? Matthew 28 very specifically is written to, or telling you about what Yeshua said to those that he trained to go out. Okay, so let's just be understanding of that. At the end of Matthew, in verse 16, it says, "And the 11 tall ones went away into Galilee to the mountain where Yeshua had appointed them. And when they saw him," so who's he talking to? The 11, all right? And he says, "All authority has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples," okay, taught ones, disciples of all the nations, immersing them into the name, okay, teaching them to guard all things I've commanded you. That's for those trained ones. He didn't say go out there and tell everybody they need to go into the nations. He said, I trained you personally for this task. And now you're ready, and I'm sending you out to do it. All right? And then those that you train, some of them will also then be trained to do this task. And by the way, they didn't go like Jehovah's Witnesses knocking on doors. They went into some towns, and they would stand on a little box and start teaching and talking, and maybe some people came to them, and maybe they didn't. And they went into a lot of towns where they just didn't get any positive reception. They brushed the dust off and went to the next town. They were looking for the whomsoever was ready to hear. Not so much the whomsoever wills, but at least those that were looking for and waiting for someone to show up and say, hey, listen, I've got the exile is coming to a close. In other words, we are regathering. But the regathering isn't yet to go all of us to Jerusalem. The regathering is to come back and seek our Elohim in the places he scattered us. That's what the prophecy says. That there you will seek him and find him. So that's the part of the good news we're in now, the seeking and finding him in exile. Then there will be a gathering when Yeshua returns back to the land. Okay, so the beginning of that prophecy is there where you are, you'll seek and find. But you can't seek and find unless there's one, remember Paul talked about, unless one is sent to you to give you that information. So you need to have somebody there to share with you. So these people would show up and they would start talking to people. Because there were new people in town, people would naturally talk to them. I talk to a lot of people, and at some point they might ask me, well, what do you do? I say, well, I'm a Messianic rabbi. And that either will cause a conversation to happen or not. I don't use that to unlock doors and force a conversation, okay? And almost never does it actually, bear fruit. Met a guy the other day, saw my seat. Where was I? At a restaurant? No, I don't know where I was. Anyway, at a store. Okay, I was at Trader Joe's in the store. Someone saw the seat. Walked by me and said, hey, what congregation do you go to? I said, Beth Shalom up in Cleveland. And I think he knew then who I was. And the conversation kind of didn't go anywhere and only lasted another few seconds. I said, well, where do you go? And he told me where he was, and I know who he goes with. It's an older congregation up near Knoxville that I knew from years ago. Okay, so you wouldn't know, most of you. But anyway, I knew who the teacher was, where he goes. I said, oh yeah, I know that guy, and blah, blah, blah. And then that was the end of it. He didn't have any more interest in just asking me where I went. But I think there must have been some connection because he seemed not interested in the conversation. After that, he's like, okay, whatever, and he just went on with his shopping. He was not someone I was supposed to be talking to more. Not like it was wrong to talk to him. I'm saying there was no conversation to be had. Guess what? When the disciples went from town to town, this happened a lot. There wasn't anybody to have the conversation with. They weren't like knocking doors going, hey, can I sit down and share something with you? There would be a drawing to them. None comes as the Father draws. They'll be drawn to them, and those are the people they would have a conversation with. They were not imposing themselves, okay? And so that's a good question. But let's understand that the Great Commission is great, but not for everybody, okay? Now, you do have something that's for everybody. You are to be a light. You are to live this and let your light so shine among men, okay? That is your Great Commission at least. Some have a little bit more because they're called to do this bully pulpit thing and talk and record and be broadcast. But for all of us, we all have the let your light so shine. Let Yeshua shine through you. Let people see your good works. Okay? That is your commission for sure. All right, that's going to close it up. Very good for everybody. I enjoyed that. I hope you did too. I was blessed. I learned a bunch of things too, because I always do as we go through these things, because my notes here simply say, read Ephesians chapter 3. So, And it mentions that the word set apart is in verse 18. That's all that's in my notes. So, verse 18 is where it says, in order that you might be strengthened to firmly grasp with all the set apart ones. So I didn't cover that actually, but we should have covered that. Is that the whole point is that you're supposed to be grasping these things, what is the length of breath, with the set apart ones, not with everybody. The set apart ones are the ones together are supposed to be grasping all these things, okay? See, I should have looked at my notes, and then we would have mentioned that. Because that was the only thing in it. One thing in my notes, and I didn't mention it. That's okay. All right. So that being said, we're going to go ahead and close.